Hello, I'm John Adams, editor of Digital Photo, and in this video lesson I want to run through some basic landscape tips that allows you to turn a shot like this into something a bit more special. Now all we're doing is using what's already there, but we're balancing up the exposure between the sky and the land. If we look at the original, one of the problems with landscapes is the sky is normally about 2 stops brighter than the foreground area. So as a result, your camera takes an average reading based on the entire scene and kind of overexposes the sky a little bit and underexposes the land a little bit. And you end up with a shot that doesn't really satisfy either end of the equation. So what you need to do is balance things up. You need to darken that sky a touch to give it more drama and a bit more oomph, and then you need to brighten up the land to restore the detail in that half of the picture. A final touch is if you use auto white balance, you normally get a very flat kind of midday look to a shot, and what you really want is a much warmer feel. So with a bit of colour balance work, you can actually warm up the whole scene to give the amber sort of tone that's really attractive in landscape images. Now what might surprise you about this technique is we're going to do everything we've seen just using the levels palette. And even better, the whole thing's going to be entirely adjustable. Let's get started. Open up sandsend.jpg that's on the CD, and the first thing we're going to do is sort out the sky. So pick up the rectangular marquee tool and then just draw right the way around that sky. Once you've done that, in most versions of Photoshop go to select feather, but if you're using Photoshop CS3 or Element 6 or 7, go to select refine edge or just click the refine edge tab in the options bar. Click on that and then use a value in feather of about sort of 120 to 150 pixels. Something like that should be fine. Make sure everything else is set to 0 and then click OK. And you'll get the marching ants around that area. What you need to do then is open up your layers palette. So go to Window and choose Layers and it'll pop up on screen. We then select the adjustment layer icon just down at the bottom of the palette in the full Photoshop and up at the top of the palette in Elements, half black, half white circle. Click on that once and then choose Levels from the list that drops down. This brings up the histogram of the selected area. And if we move these sliders around, we can do some fairly dramatic things. Moving the black point slider on the left here, move that across to meet the true graph itself, not this first little bit here, but the true graph there. You can see we get a nice dramatic sky forming. That's pretty good. We can also tweak the middle slider as well, the gamma slider, just a touch there, and maybe tweak the white as well, just to bring up those highlights. That sky is now looking 100% better, so click OK to that. That's our sky fixed. Next we're going to select the foreground area, so again we just get the rectangular marquee tool, and we're going to make a selection around the foreground like so. We need to refine the edge of that, so go to Refine Edge or select Feather, and again 120 pixels or thereabouts will do the trick. Click OK to that feathered part, and then we're going to do the same thing again. Adjustment layer, choose Levels, and now we need to move the sliders to brighten up the image rather than darken it as we've just done with the sky. So we're going to move the white point across a touch, black point in a little bit to increase contrast. Then we're going to play with this midpoint slider here. Going to the right will darken it, going to the left will brighten it up. I think somewhere around there looks good. We need a little bit more contrast, so a bit more black. Just tweak that across. And maybe a little bit of white, not too much because we'll burn out this section here. Back that off a little bit. That's the kind of thing there. I think that'll do the trick. That looks good. Once you've tweaked those 3 sliders, click OK. And already our image is much better. But the only issue with it is looking slightly cool. So to warm it up, we're again going to use levels. This time we're not going to make a selection because the adjustment we're going to make is going to apply to the entire image. So just click on the adjustment layer icon, choose levels again, and then in the channel box where it says RGB, just click on the drop down arrow and select red. Now if we move this midpoint slider to the left or the right, we get either red or cyan coming through. So if we move it a little way towards the red, maybe to sort of 1.2, something like that. Perhaps a little bit hot, but bear with me on that one. 1.2 there, click OK. Yeah, I think that's looking pretty good, but we need a bit more yellow coming in. So before we confirm it, we'll just double click again on that adjustment layer because we can go back to these whenever we like. This time click on blue. Now we move the middle slider to the right just a touch, because that will introduce yellow, which is the opposite of blue. Perhaps somewhere like that. 0.86, 0.85. Yep, that looks pretty good there. Click OK, and there we have, if we switch it on and off, there's our warm-up effect. So just by using levels and a few adjustment layers, we've taken this overexposed sky, underexposed foreground. We've first of all darkened the sky to get that balance correctly. We've then brightened the foreground to get that balance correctly. And then we've sorted out the color to apply a nice warm-up effect. And believe it or not, those 3 stages will vastly improve loads and loads and loads of landscape images. So practice that technique with the image on the disk, or if you like, find one of your own images that's a bit flat and a bit unbalanced in terms of the sky and land exposure, and give that a try. And you'll find it's one of the most useful techniques you'll ever come across. Thanks for listening. See you next time.